This is the Leafs Convo. I'm Norman James, along with Mike Augello. I put out some feelers on Twitter before we started recording this podcast, asking you if you wanted to have any Leafy things addressed, if you had any Leafs questions. Of course, William Nylander comes to mind. This is a really good one from Joe_17. Never seen him before. He's got a great red beard. He's got glasses like I do, and it seems like he loves his Maple Leafs. So he tweets, and this is from him, Leafs Nylander options ranked best to worst. So the best signs an 8-year deal with the Leafs under $7 million. Signs number 2 signs a 3-year bridge at $4.5 million. Number 3 signs 8 years at $8 million. Number 4 traded for young stud right-hand defenseman with term. Number 5 traded for a package including good young right defenseman. Sits a full year is the 6th ranked thing on Joe's list. And number 7, I believe it is, traded for a package of picks and prospects. So the question he's asking us, what order would you rank them, Michael?
Well, I think the worst option is traded for a package of picks and prospects, because that provides no help for the Leafs right away unless they flip the picks and prospects to another organization for the players that they need. And then that's adding one difficult step to another difficult step. So I think that's the worst option. I actually think the second worst option is the 8 years at $8 million. He's not an $8 million player. He never has shown that he's an $8 million player as of yet. That you're doing it on faith. And there are other players out there, and we point to the David Pastrnak deal, where, now after a year where he scores, 40 goals or close to it, and does great guns in the playoffs last year and is leading the Bruins in goals this year after a hat trick against the Leafs, he's worth the $6.6 million that he's being paid right now. But at the time that they signed that contract, a lot of people didn't think he was worth that. Do I think Nylander is worth $8 million? No, he might be in the future, but he has not earned that. So I think that's the second worst. Sits the full year. I mean, I think that's the most unlikely of the scenarios, but in the end, the Leafs would still retain Nylander. They would still retain him as an asset that they could trade or sign eventually, but it's sort of a waste. It's a 22-year-old guy that, is not playing. But then, like most of the other options, I'd say are sort of equal. But the problem is that the two top ones that Joe listed, signing 8 years for under $7 million, that's not happening because it would have happened already.
Mm-hmm, yep.
I mean, Nylander's camp has made it clear that if it's a long-term deal, that he wants over $8 million. So he wants a Draisaitl deal. And there's the only way I think he takes under $7 million is on a shorter-term deal, maybe 5 or 6 years, or on a bridge. I mean, they were talking about this on Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, and Nick Kypreos floated the idea of a 3-year bridge at $6 million. That's the same AAV as Panarin on a bridge deal. And again, William Nylander is very good. He is not Artemi Panarin. He is not David Pastrnak. Mm-hmm. So he does not deserve the amount. The comparables are nowhere close. So that's where the situation is right now. And with what was reported by Elliot Friedman on Saturday, which has been out there for a little while, that the Leafs are telling teams that are interested in Nylander to, tell us who you won't trade and put up your best offer. You're now a little under 3 weeks from the December 1st deadline. The Leafs are getting their house in order. That's not saying that it isn't possible that they could sign Nylander to a contract, but they're preparing for all eventualities. And if they get a deal that gives them, 1 or 2 pieces that they think is equal to what Nylander can provide, I think Kyle Dubas is pulling the trigger.
Yeah, why not? Team Nylander and Team Maple Leafs wanted to be together truly, it would have happened by now. Nylander's camp thinks that William Nylander is a marquee player and should be paid accordingly. The Maple Leafs have many marquee players, and while William Nylander could be the top dog on a dozen other teams across the NHL, he's not the top dog in Toronto, and he cannot be paid like he's the top dog. The salary cap restricts that because the Leafs have guys who are higher on the pecking order who need to be paid and will 100% be paid more than what Nylander is demanding, and he's demanding a lot of money. John Villela, do you think the Leafs would offer Nylander the same percentage of the cap that Ehlers and Pasternak got? Dollar figure might be higher because the cap has gone up since those guys signed. John Villela, a loyal listener to the Leafs Convo, a Leafs convert, and he likes the fact that I could pronounce his last name. Buddy, I worked in broadcasting for 16 years. I'm a master at name pronunciations, right? Mike Augeo?
Nice one. Well, I have to say this. The report on Saturday, and Kiprio said that the Leafs had not offered this yet, but it seems clear that they would offer Nylander a deal with the same percentage of cap as Ehlers and maybe go up to the Pasternak level, which is 6.6. But that, again, with the cap going up, it's not the same percentage that Pasternak was being offered. So it seems that the Leafs that's their final line of demarcation. We'll pay you 6.5. We'll pay you 6.6, but we're not paying you 7. And that's on a 6-year deal. This is not on an 8-year deal. So, because at that point, if they get him on a long-term contract at a number that's not hideous, if eventually they want to move him down the line, there's no trade restriction, and the salary is very amenable to other teams. If they want to keep him and the deal is good, then everything is great. But there's no security there for Nylander, and that's why I think he's aiming for this amount that might be tough for the Leafs to move. And the Leafs can't operate that way. They have Nylander, they have Marner, they have Matthews to pay, and he may very well be a franchise player or a star player, but he hasn't shown that yet, separated from Austin Matthews. He's scored 3 goals in 20 games without Matthews as his center. And that's not great. And I think he has to prove that he is independently a really good player to be worth what he is asking for as a restricted free agent. So again, I think that if there is a deal to be made in terms of a contract, it's more than likely going to be a bridge. I cannot see the Leafs signing him for $6 million on a bridge deal, because that's really over the top, I believe. And where I see it going here is if he doesn't take a bridge, he's going to get traded. But it all depends on the offers that the Leafs get. If they get something that they deem to be equal in value, I think they'll do it. Kyle Dubas has a lot riding on this whole situation, and he is not going to do a Peter Chiarelli and trade Taylor Hall for Adam Larson. He has got to get himself a better, more evenly distributed a deal for Nylander. Otherwise, he is on the hot seat.
We could go on and on. We should wrap up here in a moment. This is the Leafs Convo. Norman James along with Mike Augello. Thank you so much for your listenership, your support. We appreciate it, whether it's on a podcast platform of your choice or on our YouTube channel. By the way, please subscribe. 70% of our listeners are unsubscribed on YouTube, but you keep coming back. Just hit subscribe. Do us a favor. Try us out for a while.
It's one click, damn it. Come on, do it.
Absolutely. How far in advance do you think the Leafs and their management team were thinking about William Nylander and projecting the kinds of issues they would encounter? Like, how far ahead? Because where I'm going with this is, why would they have signed John Tavares to $11 million per season, knowing that he's taking up a lot of the money that would be available to pay Nylander and maybe throw a couple of extra bones his way?
The Leafs without Nylander and with Tavares are a better team. So when you slot in who is the top 5, I've heard this on the radio, who the top 5 most valuable players on the Leafs right now, including Nylander. And Nylander is not in the top 5. It's Tavares and Matthews, it's Marner, it's Freddie Anderson, it's Morgan Riley, and Nylander is 6th. When you're talking about a player who is 6th or lower, in terms of his leverage, in terms
Hold on, Mike. Hold on. I know people don't like when I cut you off, and I don't do it much. It's your recency bias is showing, Mike. Tavares is playing. Nylander's not. You're forgetting how good he is.
I have a very good memory, Norman. I think the outlook. I think Leaf management is a little surprised that it's gone this far. I know that I heard Darren Drager this morning say, I thought there would be an impasse, but I didn't think it would last till the middle of November. And I think the Leaf, management, they saw Nylander based on 260-point seasons, based on the fact that he more than likely was not going to get an offer sheet from anybody, that he was in a situation where they weren't going to lowball him. And I don't think they have lowballed him, but based on what the Nylander camp is looking for, they can perceive that the Leafs are lowballing them. And if they want to get paid, they can get paid in Carolina. They can get paid in Anaheim or other places. They're not going to get paid $8 million from the Leafs when it comes to Matthews being signed, when it comes to Marner being signed. They need to keep their powder dry for those two players. And if Nylander outprices himself, then the job of Kyle Dubas is to find the best return and get the most pieces back for a very good player.
So we're encroaching the deadline. What happens with Nylander, the Maple Leafs, and whatever?
I don't see the Leafs coming off what they've offered so far. I don't think if a long-term deal gets agreed to, it's not going to be over $7 million, because that would show that Dubas got pushed around, and that's a danger sign for Matthews and Marner's agent to take advantage of a young GM. So I don't think that's going to happen. Right now I think it's 50-50, and maybe the odds are even higher that he gets traded. It all depends on what other teams offer. If it's Brett Pesce for William Nylander, I don't think the deal is getting done. If it's Brett Pesce and something else really good, then I think that deal will get done. And there are other teams out there like Anaheim and Philadelphia who have depth on defense that they can afford to give up a young defenseman and have other forwards as well. So I think it's going to be, if the deal happens, it's going to be a multiplayer deal. It's not just going to be one for one. And, again, then at that point, then the criticism or patting on the back of Kyle Dubas will begin, because the result of the trade will depend. I think that will have a lot in terms of Dubas's reputation.
How about William Nylander for Joe Pesci and two Utes?
Ralph Macchio is not a throw-in.
Honestly, I really don't care if Nylander comes back. It's not a personal thing. I just want to see whatever happens with this situation result in an improvement for the Maple Leafs. I'd love to see William Nylander, his career take off if he's the man somewhere else and goes on to, become one of the top 10 players in the league. If it's somewhere else and the Leafs were able to bring back assets to improve where they are now, then so be it. That's the way it is. You can't keep everybody in this day and age, especially with that salary cap. Michael, any last words? We got to go.
Yep. I think the level of frustration amongst the fan base. I mean, there are fans out there who really like William Nylander as a player. There are fans out there that are not big fans. I think the level of frustration on both sides are at the same level. They want a resolution one way or the other. Let's get it done. But the management is not going to do that until they find either the best deal in a contract or the best deal in a trade. So we have less than 3 weeks to wait. I'm sure there's going to be a resolution before then.